we go, let's get those wheels out on the road. It may get dusty, but that's the way she goes. We'll build some greasy old cars and drink our AGD. Hey, don't you know, it's partly built.
Okay, we're back out in the garage. And it's time to get back at our straight axle here. So I got a little bit of cutting left to do because I didn't quite cut the one end far enough. This one here, which you can't see on the camera probably anyway. But I got to cut a little bit more off the edge of this. And then we're going to bevel these edges up and we're going to get this thing tacked together. Or at least that's the plan. Now that we got that end cut off this one, you saw that I just threw the flap wheel on and just put a slight bevel to all this. Tried to get everything as good as I could, and now I'm gonna flip probably this one over, slide them together. I'm gonna tack it, and then with like 1 or 2 tacks, and then we'll try and get all our geometry kind of close and throw a couple more tacks on. So it's been week and a half since I was last out here. It's just been cold, busy. We're less than a week from Christmas, so things have been a little hectic. And I've just been waiting on parts. With the postal strike, even stuff shipped DHL has been a nightmare. But I did start welding on the axle just to tack it together enough, put a few little beads on it, enough that it's good enough. I can do test fitting with it, and honestly, I'm not scared to put a little bit of weight on it. So I can keep tinkering away now. I do have a guy, I need to talk to him again, but it sounded like he wasn't afraid to weld it for me, which is good news because, well, we all know that if I weld it, there's a good chance it's going to take my life or someone else's, so we're just not going to risk that. But that's about all I can do on this axle right now, so, I mean, well, I guess I can try and figure out width and placement, but I haven't decided if I'm putting the wheels dead center in the wheel well or slightly ahead. I got to look at a few more pictures of some gassers that I really like and kind of judge from there. So it's just a matter of, well, getting the engine mounted, because with all the jack stands and stuff in the way under there, I can't really do much with the front suspensions. And I'm waiting on, I ordered some spacers for the springs. What did I order? I ordered the glitter steering wheel, because every gasser needs a glitter steering wheel. I ordered the spacers, and I ordered something else. Can't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. Well, my engine mounts still haven't showed up, so I ordered another one. Those ones have been on order for the better part of a month and a half. This here, 3 days. And this is much better because I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see this, but if you read this, it clearly says it is a direct fit to bolt a Jaguar 5.3 V12 into a 49 Chevy frame. So I can't believe how lucky I was to get something that's perfect for that. So this is a full cross member, and it comes with Chevy style engine mounts, and it comes with slide-on bolted frame anchors. So basically you cut it to the width you want, slide these guys on it, and place it in there. So basically now I need to pull my old mounts off, probably cut up and grind up those plates, get this kind of set under the engine, kind of where it needs to go, figure my width, cut it down, and then once I get that figured out, I'll get my engine mounts mounted onto those heavy plates that Steven and I built long ago for that thing. And I think honestly this is a way better decision. We're going to have a cross member, we're going to have mounts that are easy to deal with. The only thing I'm worried about is if I don't have enough height, but looking here now, the bottom of that engine is a really shallow pan at the front, like for 3/4 of the engine, so it shouldn't be an issue. But anyway, I'll get this axle out of the way, I'll clean up my mess here, and I'll kind of get the camera and myself all organized to try and do a little more here. I may pull the intake manifolds back off again as well, just to make things easy, but we'll see. Well, the engine's out. I didn't bother filming it. It's cold in here, the battery doesn't last long on the GoPro. Plus you don't need to see me screw around pulling intakes back off and pull the engine back out, but engine's out. So I measured from the valve cover to the top of the cowl, 11 3/4 inches, so I know roughly what height I need to be. I already have the frame marked kind of where I want to be for how deep in the engine is. So now I need to modify my mounts so that this can be on there. It'll actually go this way, but and then we can get the cross member on it, and the cross member should fit actually quite well. I'll bolt the mounts to it, set it up in there, and we'll see what we think. But we also have to narrow this a lot. Like the frame is there on both sides, but these are those bolted on items that slide onto the ends, and then you weld them, of course. But what we'll do is we'll end up shortening these, we'll end up shortening the tubes on that, and then we'll bolt it to the engine. We'll set the engine in, and we'll leave these loose. We'll kind of get it where it needs to be, and then we'll either through bolt it with some spacers, or more likely we'll end up just welding these in. I'd rather just have the cross member welded in, then I don't have to worry. I can't do a lot of welding in the garage right now because I don't have the amperage, like I don't have a heavy enough breaker. I blew the breaker twice in the welding I did on that axle. So I'm gonna have to get a bigger breaker put in the breaker box so I can run the welder, but that's not a big deal. In the meantime, like I said, we'll just keep tinkering away on this little stuff. And all this only needs to be tacked together for now. Tacked together enough that it'll hold a 700-pound engine, but yeah. So first things first, I'll get kind of figured out how far back my mount is going to be. I'll make sure that the width of my engine is all right. I'm hopefully not having to change lengths on this. I'm hoping I'll just be able to modify these brackets and kind of get it close, but we won't know until we try. So I'm going to get tinkering on it here and we'll see how far we get. Well, as you can tell by the smoke in here, I've been doing a little bit of grinding. So between the grinding dust and the fire, it's getting a little thick in here, but that doesn't matter too much. So what I did is I pulled the plates off that were on here, and I cut the original engine mounts, because we had originally, when we were planning on putting this in the Corvette, to try and set the engine mounts where we needed them, we added these plates, and we essentially took the 3-bolt mount that was here and moved it over, used one of the bolts, and welded it on to this heavy plate. Well, as luck would have it, when I hold my cross member up to it, that's about the perfect width with that plate. I mean, I haven't tried it since I changed the mounts, but that's when I first quick threw it up there. So basically all I did was I cut those off. I drilled one extra hole for a bolt here for the mounts, and as it sits, I'm using the 3 factory bolts that the Jaguar used, and I've got one of them going through my engine mount, and I added a bottom bolt, so the engine mount is double bolted and it's through bolted. So if we're honest, that's probably plenty strong enough. If I have issues, I'll probably change these up to a solid steel mount and weld them completely to the plate, but this should be good enough for now. So they're just mocked up. I'll eventually take it off and I'll cut these plates square or whatever, and it'll be good to go. But I guess we can now try to fit the cross member on, and I truly haven't tried it since I put these plates on. As you can see, did the exact same thing with the other side. I did try to drill a hole for this top bolt on this plate, for both top bolts, but that hole, the thread's pretty much right there because, well, it's so full of corrosion, they never used it from the factory. They only used 3 out of the 4 on the block, and there's just not enough room for the head of the bolt on the back side of that. I suppose you can't really see any of that, but I promised that's what it is. So basically, I'm gonna try and put this in here now. And this was a really good kit. It came with all the bolts I needed to bolt the brackets to the frame, but it didn't come with engine mount bolts. So I dug through my scrap pile and I found a couple that should hopefully do the job, at least for mock-up. So these holes in these mounts are slotted, and these bolts are a little small, so it does give us a little bit of room there. I don't know how well it'll show on the camera here, so I'll just grab the camera. If you look right here, you can see the hole isn't quite lined up. That's fine. I can always space these out more. Not a big deal. So that actually fits on there really well. And because I use the factory engine mount locations and a factory engine mount bolt through the new mounts, they are actually lined up level with the engine. So now I need to measure from the front of my engine, which I had marked here, and I even wrote on the frame, front of block. So this line here I want to be the front of the block to kind of leave enough room for the fan and the rad. So I can measure from the front of my block back to the center of my tube. Actually, I'll probably move from the front of the block back to the mount bar because it's a nice flat spot and it won't change when I cut this. So I'll measure that distance. I'll figure that out on my frame. And I think just by luck, my bad luck that is, it happens to be right where the frame kind of curves. So that could make things a little more interesting for me, but I'll measure it up and I'll kind of figure out and mark this where I need to cut it. Well, I may or may not have successfully done something, but I've got this all shortened up and I can't get much shorter. And luckily, you know, because I'm such a talented welder, there's not a large gap here at all because the tube is compressed from being bent. But I just got to grab my tape measure, do a final measure here, make sure we're less than 22 inches because I am sleeved on inch and a quarter on each side. So I will have a little movement. If my measurement is within 22 inches, I'll bolt it to the engine again and we'll set it down in the frame and hopefully it sits exactly where I want it, but I guess we'll have to see. Thankfully for once I actually thought ahead a little bit. I buffed most of the rust off the frame and the paint off the edges of this because I know I'm about as lazy as they get. And if I put this in and it's where I want it, I'm going to start welding those mounts in. And, well, yeah, if there's rust and paint there, my bad welds are going to be even worse. And I don't need that. I don't need the competition from the rust. So we'll get the stuff on the engine and we'll set her in there. Well, there you go. It's sitting in the frame. I gotta take some weight off the engine. So now that I know, because like you can see, these aren't flush, right? So now that I know it's gonna fit, what I'll probably do is just pull the engine mount bolts out. And then I know my width is right and all that stuff. What I can do is I can pull it out, get the weight off it. And these plates do wiggle on the tube. I can basically bring the plates flat with the frame, tack the plates on, and then I can set the engine back down inside the cradle and center the cradle. Well, I can probably center the cradle inside the frame before I put the engine in it, but by leaving those not welded for now, I can tip my engine forward and back. Like, it's not going to go anywhere because it's sleeved in those tubes. So I'll put a jack stand under the back or a ratchet strap, get my height about right for now, and then once I get the bell housing and the transmission and get the mount built, then I can full weld these tubes in the front But I'm really happy with that. So if you look, I had my mark here to have this the front of the block, and the block's just behind that, which I'm happy with. I haven't measured from the top of the cowl down, but I'm sure it's actually lower than I had it, which is fantastic. That makes things so much nicer, so much easier. The simple fact that I don't have ratchet straps and jack stands under the front of this is going to be awesome. So I think it's just after 10. I think I'm going to quick pull those bolts, flatten those plates against the frame, get them to the same height. I think I'm going to try and lay them directly, because I can tip them so it doesn't matter, directly on the lip of the frame here on the inside. There's the same lip. And we'll tack them for now. And then, yeah, oh man, this makes me feel so much better. I love this. I got a little overzealous with the welder. I just had to run back in the house and flip the breaker again. But I do have it kind of sort of tacked. The bottom along the top. Really bad welds on this one, but you know, I'm not a good welder. It's the first time I've actually ever used this welder as a MIG welder. Had flux core wire in it before, and I was really bad with that. You think this is bad? You should have seen that. But this tube theoretically can rotate as we need it to because it's not welded. And those are tacked well enough. I'm not concerned at all about putting the weight to the engine on it, especially because it is partially supported by the frame rail lip. So I'll get this engine set back in there, throw the bolts back in it, and we'll throw a stand under the back and see how it looks. Well, there you go. One haggardly mounted V12. I'm actually really happy with the work I did here. I'm really happy I went this way instead of the original mounts that I ordered, because I would have had to weld tabs to the frame, just up tabs. It would have been a lot harder to square things. And I'm using square as a relative term because who knows how bent up this frame is, number one. And number two, I don't really know how to use one of these. So, anyway, I can't believe, like, I didn't measure the width of this block versus the width of the small block or an LS or a big block or any of that. I just ordered that mount kit figuring I can narrow the center, I can widen the center. I just figured, you know what, that'd be the easiest way to do this. I need to add a cross member anyway for strength and peace of mind because, you know, I pulled the big front suspension out of it with the heavy cross member. That's a major component of it. So I'm super happy with that. And for those wondering, I was 11 3/4 what I wanted, and I'm sitting at 12 inches as it sits right now. But like I said, once I get the front suspension sitting in it and the suspension set, and then I get the transmission and the bell housing put in, I can adjust the angle of the engine to suit my mounting, to suit how nose high it is, whatever. But that is so nice in there. I can't believe how well that fits. I mean, ignore the giant massive hole in the firewall, but like it fits in between those frame rails really well. There's plenty of room here to reach the mounts and whatnot. I'm not too worried about room for exhaust because it's a gasser. The exhaust is coming out here. The only problem with that is there's 2 exhaust ports inside the cab on each side. So when we repair the firewall or whatever we end up doing, like whether we move the whole thing back farther, I don't know. But we'll have to make sure that we notch the firewall at the very least enough for the header tubes, and that we insulate it well enough that we don't cook our feet. But, oh well, I guess cook the gauges too. I could run the factory manifolds. I still have them somewhere, I think. They might be in that tub over there, I'm not sure. But if you're going to build a gasser, you don't run cast iron manifolds. You need big, nasty fender well headers and side pipes. Well, undersill exhaust anyway. So I'm super happy with this. Like I said, I'm waiting on some stuff for the front suspension. I can kind of eyeball it, kind of figure out what I want to do for where I want to put the springs. But really, it's going to be determined by when I hang the fenders. Do I want the center of the axle in stock position, or do I want it moved ahead like you see on a lot of gassers? I don't know. I'm gonna do a little research, see what I think, but yeah, I'm so stoked on this. You have no idea. This was one of those major hurdles I wanted to get through. I can jack the back end up a little bit, put a 2x4 across the frame rails, and set the back of the engine on it if I have to. And it's not a big deal now. And then if I can get front suspension mounted on it, I can at least have it mobile. I mean, right now at the very least, I can put dollies under the front and shimmy it around, because Ethan from Heathen's Garage is coming to pick up the old 302 in the corner. So he'll be here like next week for that, or next week, week and a half. So I actually have to completely gut out that half of the garage just to get it by. And then, if you don't remember, when I tore the fenders and stuff off this, I put them out in front of the garage. I also put the front suspension out there, and my motorcycle's out there. And my truck's out there, and there's a foot of snow and ice on my truck, and it has no heater, or block heater for that matter. So I gotta get all that stuff moved for Ethan to be able to back in, so we can put that engine in the back of his truck. Because I know I don't want to manhandle it in there, and I'm sure he doesn't either. So the fact that the engine's mounted is huge. It gives me a lot more room. Like, I can slide the axle back under it, I can slide the wheels back, like, so much nicer. And then once we get that engine loaded up for Ethan, I can take the engine hoist back to work, and that frees up another portion of my garage that I have to work around all the time. So, but anyway, I'm gonna call it a night. It's like 10:30. I still gotta go give drugs to the cat and shower and go to bed, and it's an early morning tomorrow, so I'm just over the moon on this. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you in the next one. It's been great. Bye.